Hi, Grace family. Happy Friday to you. Just a couple notes on the outdoor service for Sunday. We're doing one service at 9 a.m. We're asking you to bring some chairs. We're going to require a mask and take your temperature as well. And I want to remind you, obviously, that it's going to be very, very warm. So bring some water, dress casually, and look forward to seeing you here. If the outdoor venue isn't work for you, obviously we're going to do the online worship services. So please continue to avail yourself of hearing and receiving the Word of God through those online services. Today, this Friday, we're going to continue looking at 1 Peter chapter 3. Let me read to you, beginning with verse 18. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the Spirit, in which he went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison, because they formerly did not obey, when God's patience waited in the days of Noah while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through water. Baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you, not as the removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a good conscience, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God with angels, authorities, and powers, having been subjected to him. There's tons of stuff in this passage. We're only going to pick out a few different things. But if you followed the video on Tuesday, the admonition for those who are God's people scattered throughout the world in order to spread his gospel was that we would suffer for doing good. So that admonition was to suffer for doing good, namely spreading the gospel, sometimes even amidst a hostile culture and environment. Here, Peter picks up that topic, mentioning that Christ also suffered, and he suffered for doing good. And this is the ultimate good, right? This is the righteous one, as Peter says, suffering, giving up his life, shedding his blood for the unrighteous, which is every single human being, you and me included. Christ suffered, the righteous one, for us, the unrighteous, as he said, in order to bring us to God. So through the work of Jesus on that cross, you and I are brought to God. And that's the gospel message that we get to share with other people. Now, there's this curious part about Jesus descending into hell and proclaiming to the spirits in prison. So Jesus suffered, died on that cross, was buried, and then he descended into hell, as we confess in the Creed. This is one of the few places in the Bible where it talks about that. Now, Jesus didn't go into hell in order to suffer, but he went to proclaim to the spirits in prison. And the proclamation here, the Greek word shows us that Jesus went to proclaim his victory in his death on the cross and in his soon-to-come resurrection. Now, what Peter does is he reads the Old Testament the way Jesus wants us to, according to Luke chapter 24. So he looks at the Old Testament and sees connection to Jesus and the work that he does. So here Peter brings to mind the salvific event that happened in the flood. Salvific now for the 8 people, Noah and his family. And he says that rescue, that deliverance that God gave to Noah and his family through the ark in that water foreshadowed the coming of baptism, where God would also bring salvation, deliverance, rescue to those who have been baptized in and through that water. Now, how can Peter say something so blatantly, like he says in verse 21, baptism now saves you? Well, he doesn't say, well, it's not that your body is clean, but you have a clean conscience towards God. It saves you, Peter said, through the resurrection of Jesus. So Noah and his family in the Old Testament were saved through water there in the ark. Jesus came, brought salvation through his death and resurrection, proclaiming his victory to the spirits in prison. And so now the resurrection of Jesus gets given to those who are baptized as a gift. And then it ends with this glorious passage. Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God, not a place, but a position of power and authority, with angels, authorities, and power being subjected to him. Now notice that it talks about Jesus suffering, the righteous for the unrighteous, and ends with Jesus in the position of power and authority at the right hand of God over all things. So to those who are suffering for doing good, in the midst of being the elect exiles of the dispersion, even in the midst of suffering while doing good, we are serving a Lord who reigns and rules over all. And that is a bit of encouragement that every missionary needs as they look to serve and spread the gospel where God has scattered them. Have a great weekend. Stay cool.